He said,
Thank you for meeting with us, Mayor and Council. Tonight I've got McClellan. I got Zane Lewis with McClellan Engineering. He's the engineer that's been working on our wastewater treatment facility issues. He's got a PowerPoint to go over with you guys. I do have some large plan sheets in the back. If you guys, after this is done, we finish up before the council meeting, feel free to come back and look and we can talk about it or whatever. But they're on the back tables back there, and I'll let Zane take it from here. You guys have any questions for me?
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for your time. I think we've got the slides up now. Let me know if you don't see them down here in front of you, and then there's also the big screen behind you as well.
you want to introduce yourself?
Thank you. Yes, Zane Lewis. I work with McClellan Consulting Engineers. I've been with them for 5 years now. I brought with me Nick Backer. He is our leader of our water wastewater division at our Fayetteville office. And so he will jump in as needed, or I may look to him for a few clarifications if you guys have questions about stuff that I don't know an immediate answer for. But I like a pretty casual, presentation. If you guys have questions, or if I'm saying something that you don't understand, just let me know and we can try to jump in. I'm going to try to cover a lot, so I may try to go quickly unless you stop me. But again, thanks for being here this evening. We're here to talk about the wastewater plant. And so I understand that you guys have been getting some updates from Simon. Of course, I've met with you at least once to give you a bit of an update on some of the enforcement actions by the Department of Environmental Quality. And at this point, that is just ongoing. And so hopefully this will provide you with a lot more information about where we are. So really the focus tonight is about trying to get you guys set up for a long-term, easily maintained and permit compliant wastewater facility that isn't stressing staff or you guys out about budget concerns that are coming out of left field without planning. So, really the big piece of equipment that's out at the plant that has been causing us trouble is the very first one as the gravity line comes into the plant on the south side, the screenings and grit removal unit. And so it has been experiencing a lot of issues recently and causing the staff a lot of time to try to deal with. There have also been a series of sanitary sewer overflows from the SBR basins that were caused by failures of float control mechanisms and pump controls. And so with those reported overflows, DEQ is very focused on you all right now and has continued to issue enforcement actions of required responses to letters, additional testing of the creek and the effluent, additional write-ups weekly from staff about the status of the plant, and then apparently today we've also received a letter that's requiring documentation of staff lab certifications. So that's a new one that just came in today. Along with that, and really partially to cause it, were the equipment failures in the main building of the treatment facility, which was a pump that services the SBR units and a blower. Some of that damage, we believe, was caused by rocks and debris that has entered the plant because of the failing screenings and grit removal equipment. So basically, as you guys know, we've been retained to help communicate with DEQ and make sure that they're getting all the information they need. So far, we've written 3 letters, and we've been receiving responses, and that is ongoing. So just a brief bit of background to kind of tell the story of this screenings and grit equipment. All the way back in 2007, when the plant was put under consent order, there was a series of things that needed to be completed. All except for complete spare parts inventory were complete, or that may have been complete previously, but is currently now back in progress. And so, there's been some work that had to be done to get that to happen, and that included an expansion of the plant in approximately 2011, 2012. The design was from a few years earlier, but with that expansion, they did not construct what was an originally planned new piece of equipment for screenings and grit removal, and in fact a storage basin for sludge, which is one of the byproducts of the treatment process that we have to deal with. And so right now we're having to waste directly to the belt filter press, which does not allow any basically any slack in the routine and the staffing for the plant. That presumably was because of both budget and the fact that at that time the screenings equipment was functional, it was working. So then the consent order at the original 2007 consent order was lifted, and the following year the screenings equipment began to fail. The equipment manufacturer, Lakeside, came to the site in February of 2016 and performed a comprehensive evaluation of the equipment, and they determined that basically full replacement was necessary. Again, at the time, my understanding is that that was deemed incredibly too expensive, on the order of $500,000, and so time went on. Today, or if we had gone out for our tour, these are some of the pictures that you might see of the aging equipment. This is very common for equipment at a wastewater treatment plant that is 20 plus years old, including cracking at concrete structures and just general debris and residue. And in the middle screen, you can see some of those screening bars that have been broken. Inside of the equipment is where the real action happens, of course, and that is the most aggressive of the waste there. The grit on the right, on my right, and then the screenings basket, the circular basket on the left, is the primary mode of trying to get things like gravel, sticks, other personal care product type of debris out of the waste stream that is not biodegradable and able to be consumed by the biological process in the SBRs. So after the equipment started to fail, then buildup and residue proceeded. Real quickly, that piece of equipment is serviced by this pump station, which in the previous proposed design to replace the screenings and grid equipment, this lift station would have been eliminated, which would be fewer pieces of equipment to maintain and less money to run pumps. So that's one of the things that we've been trying to look at is it still possible to do this equipment replacement and also eliminate a lift station on site that costs money to operate and maintain? So then we fast forward to 2021, and the EPA enters again, and they engage with their Circuit Rider Assistance Program, and they have noted that the facility is a SNCC, significant non-compliant entity. So you guys are on their naughty list. It's not a good place to be. Basically, the more time we take to fix the problem, the more effort that both McClellan and staff and subsequently y'all will have to make to convince them that you're taking appropriate actions, you're putting in planning and long-term funding to make sure that these things don't keep happening. So that rider program also had a series of recommendations, which many of are still in progress. And so most recently, what we believe has been a part of what is the new attention on the plant is that after the Circuit Rider program was finalized, which was during still the beginning of the COVID period, the EPA probably thought that they didn't need to worry about y'all as much. But unfortunately, we've subsequently had some issues that have caused us to become high attention to them again. And so they're opening the whole can of worms up again. And so, this would probably be one of the great times to point out that we believe at McClellan that the sooner we can get ahead of their questions and be giving them the answers that they're expecting, the less we'll have to deal with them. So I've mentioned the failure of a couple other pieces of equipment, the pump and the blower, and this is just a picture of that piece of the pump, the coupling drive shaft that was broken, that we believe was partially due to rocks in the pump that caused too much torque on the impeller. And so these are the repaired and now spare pump. And then here is the spare repaired blower. And so incrementally, we are addressing all of the EPA and the DEQ's needs, but we're having to do that in a responsive way rather than in a proactive way. So a few other things going on right now is that the plant is in the middle of applying for your new NPDES discharge permit, which is your federal permit that you operate under to have the plant and discharge into the creek. And based on other new permits from other communities, it is very unclear whether there are going to be more stringent limits on the requirements that the treatment plant is required to maintain. And so the example, as I've pointed out here, would be ultra-low phosphorus. So right now, you are only required to meet a limit of 1 milligram per liter phosphorus, and it is other communities that have been brought to the 0.5 have had to make major investments to make that transition from 1 to 0.5. So that could include new basins, that could include filters, that could include significantly more chemical treatment. Yes, sir. Mr. McClung.
Are they likely to make us do that?
Right now, my gut would say no, because we haven't heard anything from them about it. They often, when they want to make that big of a change, they'll start telling us, but it is unclear.
So if it's unclear, I mean, it's just like, the health department, has been with septic systems in the past. And one year they want it this way, and the next year they want it that way. And, I don't want to be a victim of that. If we're going to do it, then we better do it, with the future in mind, and that they're going to slap something on us. So that's the problem we're in now. We just never addressed it the way we should. And city council we don't have any idea what this stuff is. So we're at the whim or at the mercy of whoever comes along and sells us a bill of goods, and tonight too.
Sure, absolutely.
And so
we're glad to be here.
I understand that. And I'm glad you're here because we've got to address it. We don't want to be taken advantage of.
I really appreciate that.
And but we need to have, where we're finally going to be taking care of business and for down the road as well. Absolutely.
The SBR plant that you guys have now is a very robust plant. If the nutrient for phosphorus was lowered, it is likely that with modifications it could work. It would likely require something. And so it's unclear whether that's going to be a filter or extra pumps or, and so that's part of what I wanted to point out here is that the improvements that we're talking about today don't even have anything to do with that. And so the reality is that the biological treatment that you guys are experiencing is not the primary issue. It's working fine. It's been in compliance. It's these ancillary, it's basically the little widgets that have all aged out, and we don't have any spare parts on the shelf to go replace them with.
It's the overflows, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. But to the point, the failure of the screenings and grit equipment is allowing additional debris that is causing the SBRs to not be able to work efficiently.
Sure, absolutely.
That's right.
I understand that.
Yes.
They need to be primary. That needs to be
That's right.
rectified.
Well, and so the other thing that Terry has helped us determine is that we need to do a deep clean of those basins. And so one of the things that this project would propose is during the low flow time of the year, which we believe we are approaching, we would try to get after it and get out there where we actually have the ability to shut down half of the unit at a time and clean it out, get all that stuff out of there, get it back to operating at 100% efficiency.
What do we do with all the stuff that we clean out?
Goes to a landfill.
Harry, and I'd like all the council members, please speak into the microphone so everybody can hear.
Right.
Yes, that's a really good question because we'll talk a little bit more about the belt filter press and the solids handling facilities at the plant. It is undersized for doing that type of a deep clean operation in a short duration of time. And so the contractor that would be on site would likely have other forms of dewatering, whether that would be basins with filter fabric, but we would basically be pumping the sludge that has a lot of water into it into something that's going to let it set, dewater. We're going to be collecting the filtrate off of it, putting that back into the plant. It'll be a process. It'll take some time.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Are you planning on doing that this year?
The goal would be yes, as soon as possible.
Yeah, the slow season is coming.
We're here.
Hopefully, yeah, we're here. Okay, that's what I'm wondering.
And we can talk about that in a lot more detail, but we would like to propose to you a few things that would possibly make that quicker than what we might be used to with traditional construction. I think on this page, the only other thing I wanted to mention is that we are proposing to participate in the utility rate study. I don't know if the display killed here. Is that me? There it goes. Talking about funding, obviously nobody has money to go pull millions of dollars out of their pocket and do something you weren't anticipating. And so we're going to talk about a utility rate study. The good news. We think that you are in a perfect position based on the regulatory involvement. And what that does is it actually makes you more eligible for federal financing. And so right now, as we've learned with many other clients, federal loans are one of the most, attainable and low interest forms of financing for capital improvements. We recently had a client that received a $32 million promise in loans for 4%. So, and we'll talk more about that in a later slide. But the SBR we think is okay. So that's a big deal because it could be exponentially more expensive if we had to deal with the heart of the biological treatment process. And so, with having this opportunity to pick and choose where we really need to do the work, we think we can keep this within the budget that we're going to propose to you. One of the particular things we're excited about is creating some room on site for the contractor, which could be getting rid of these old structures that have not been in service for years and are actually somewhat of a liability.
How big are they? I mean, since we didn't have the tour,
Oh yeah, so one of them, the old trickling filter, is like 30 feet tall and about 30 feet in diameter or so, or maybe it's 40 feet tall actually with its foundation base. It's a big structure. And so it has quite of a nice footprint that when we toured with some contractors, they were looking around like, where are we going to do this work? And so that was one of the answers. So I don't know if you recognize this handsome man, but this is your saving grace. This guy right here has kept men with guns and badges from coming to our site and entering the facility to make arrests. They don't mess around. DEQ, EPA, and Terry has done everything he possibly can, including additional sampling, including working on Saturdays, to get the answers that DEQ has been asking for, albeit that the questions and data they're asking for weren't really the problem, but we're going through the motions of what they're asking us to do, and we're giving them everything they need. Terry does not want to be a wastewater treatment plant operator until he's 105. I asked him. I thought he was into it, but he's not into it. So, we have William, and the future of the wastewater plant operations, I think, can be bright, but it takes time. William will have to work for up to 6 years before he could replace Terry. And if we were to try to go hire Terry brand new right now, we might not be able to afford him. Simon, of course, also carries licenses. He is not currently able to, but should very soon be able to carry the license that the plant requires. But that's another ongoing thing that the Public Works Division is working on to make sure that you guys are taken care of. Just a little bit of, yes, sir.
on page 5, I see we got the stuff that was supposed to have been done in 2012.
Yes, sir.
Didn't get done. And the big tank over here that says deleted, is that the 30-foot thing we're talking about?
No, that one on the right, let me see if I can't get back here. That is a tank that did not get built. It was going to be sludge storage. And so we still need that. We have some, sort of, but it's not really very well put together to be able to work conveniently for Terry and staff. That location that is shown for that circular tank is currently empty. There is nothing there right now.
Okay.
Good question. And definitely, to the point of us having to cancel our tour today, I know that Simon, Terry, or I would be more than happy to take any of you guys down to the plant and look around and see some of what we're talking about, especially as we get closer to actually doing some construction. I think that'd be really helpful for everybody. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but I love this picture, so I have to put it in every presentation I do. Those are my 3 beautiful children and my partner, Aaron. Nick here is my direct supervisor, and he's been my leader for 5 years, and I wouldn't be in water wastewater if it weren't for him. I would be off designing a park or something. But this is my passion. I grew up out of school working with another local engineering firm that specializes in water and wastewater, and I did that for 14 years before thinking I was going to maybe design parks, and I didn't really like that. So glad to be back here, glad to be with McClellan. A couple other engineers that will likely work on this project are Mr. Shannon Jones, who's been a recent addition to our team. He comes to us with 25 plus years of experience. And then Spencer Briggs, who's our newest engineering intern, has probably been spending as much or more time at the site with Terry than I have, helping me to gather information and take pictures and stuff like that. Spencer couldn't be here today because he's on vacation. Lucky him. Real quick, we are doing other work in this community. We really love coming here. We all vacation here. We all love different aspects of it. We have people who love coming downtown. We have people who love going on the mountain bike trails. I like getting out on the lake, personally. But we've helped you guys with the storm drainage tunnel down Main Street. We're currently working with some private citizens on some issues with that. We've helped you guys with water line improvements. We've helped you with sewer improvements, obviously. And, we would like to continue that relationship. So this is even more important since we didn't get to get on site, but this is your aerial photograph of the facility, a little bit of tree cover, and then the blue line going through there is really just sort of, the idea of Leatherwood Creek. So it's on the east. North would be to the left. If this animation will work. Yeah, so there the gravity main comes in from the right-hand side, and it's above ground. So it's kind of neat to see this pipe suspended 10 feet above the ground on piers. And it hits, you can barely see the shiny thing, but that's the screenings and grit removal equipment that I keep talking about. And so from there, because it drops down below the gravity pipe flow elevation, it has to be pumped. So that's where this little pump station comes in that we believe we may be able to eliminate, which would reduce operations and maintenance. From there, it's pumped back into this gravity main line and over to your old Parshall flume, which is one of the most original pieces of the plant, probably from the 60s. And that is where the flow is measured, so we can determine how much water's coming in. From there, it goes into the big basin there that looks like chocolate milk, and those are the sequencing batch reactors. So the bottom half is one reactor, the top half is the second reactor, and then those little concrete walkways are just that. They provide access for equipment maintenance and other things if you need to pump it out. But those are two basins, not 8. From there, we go into the little building just to the right of that. That arrow is hard to see, but that is where you get post-aeration and UV disinfection, and then we're discharging to the creek. So one of the interesting things that is not true about every wastewater plant is that you don't discharge continuously. You discharge in about 6-hour increments every 18 hours, something like that. 3-hour increments, 3-hour increments. And that's the batch reaction process. So one tank is always filling, another tank is reacting, and then there's discharge when the reaction is done. So the exact length of the reaction time can depend on how much wastewater is coming in or how strong it is, basically. Real quick, just highlighting here, this is some of your existing permit information. And I talked about your phosphorus limit, which we believe is one of the more sticky ones on how to get it out if you haven't been able to remove it biologically. And so as we try to deal with that limit, that's where we're using a lot of chemicals. Leatherwood Creek, where we discharge, does have an impairment classification in the Arkansas 303D list for dissolved oxygen, but that does not occur until some distance downstream. So it would seem that the plant's dissolved oxygen effluent is actually probably helping that situation a little bit, but definitely not hurting it. Real quick, we took a basic look at your flows over the past year, DEQ always likes for you to be having a plan of a capacity expansion if you're bumping up to 80% of your permitted flow rate. Your permitted flow rate is 0.9 million gallons or 900,000 gallons a day. You are not within 80% of that or up to the 0.72 million gallons per day yet. You're sitting at about 0.45 or 0.5 million gallons per day average. What we would like to suggest is that we also need to be looking at the sort of daily or monthly average flows during the peak tourism season and make sure we're not running into any trouble there. But right now we're looking good. And so this is a graph of those flows over the past year. The design flow, if we were to try to come at you and be proposing a brand new plant, actually aligns well with your average daily flow, so that's good. So basically this slide is talking about the biological treatment process, but really the point here is that we don't have enough data yet. You know, we've been working with y'all for a little less than 3 months now, really less working time if you count the holidays, but what we would like to do is help to come up with some sampling protocols that would give us the data that we can provide to DEQ to make sure that all their questions are answered and they don't have any concerns about the plant. And that would include both influent and effluent. Right here, I'm listing the effluent sampling results. And one of the things we'd like to do is specifically target in on dissolved oxygen, pH, and fecal, and get good test data and make sure to show DEQ some really good responses on that. So, what do we think needs to be done? There is sort of a minimum and additional, but the problem is it's unclear right at this moment exactly how much the minimum is going to cost. And so that's part of how we've developed the budget we've developed that we'll show you in just a minute. But basically, we think we need to repair the grit and screenings equipment, repair, replace. And then we need to provide the plant staff with proper aerated sludge storage, which would allow them some flexibility during the peak seasons of sludge production. And then providing DEQ with the standard operating procedures and basically proof of a stocked spare parts, that's kind of a non-negotiable. To do that, cleaning the units, especially the SBRs of the rocks and debris that we talked about, and then creating some of the space for the contractor to perform this work on site by demolition of abandoned structures, we believe is a part of the minimum to just get this done, stay in compliance, keep ADQ happy. The additional recommendations start to become the things that are significantly less expensive to ask a contractor to do when they are already on site. And so these are things that may or may not be critically necessary, but could become critically necessary at any moment. And it's unclear, for instance, when the belt filter press bearings will go out. But if we do a rebuild, then we believe we have 10 to 15 years on that piece of equipment. Things like trimming the trees, some of that's just maintenance that because the staff works so hard, they're not out there to be able to do that kind of work. They're doing their wastewater treatment operations work. And then the solids handling, as I've mentioned, we're using an existing structure that has been converted, but it still has the old clarifier equipment in it, and it is not aerated. And so what will happen if the sludge sits in there too long is it gives back up its phosphorus. It's like, hey, I already ran my marathon, here's your phosphorus back. I don't want it anymore. And then you've got to deal with it again. And so the best way that we can eliminate the phosphorus is by getting it out in the sludge and getting that out before it's re-released into its liquid. You've got about an hour and a half usually, and that's why they run the belt press continuously whenever they're wasting. If the budget were to allow, there are also some significant improvements to the actual solids handling building. We're able to fit one truck in there right now, but what would be amazing is to be able to fit a full roll-off in such a way that a truck could back in, like leave an empty one basically, back in, drop an empty one, pick up the filled one and go. And then there's other ways like a sludge drying bed, which would basically be bulk storage on site in some sort of a weather enclosure. So we all know how much buildings cost. So we put this together as a markup of the best plan of the existing site. And really, all of these notes combined are more than the budget we've shown you, but these are the things that we think are worth trying to get into the budget. And then the things that we've mentioned already that are the most serious and that we'll see in a couple slides are going to be in the budget. But the purple or pink area, I should say, is the area that we believe can almost fully be demolished, disposed, and cleared for new construction. If that area is available to a contractor, all of a sudden everything he's going to build new becomes incrementally less expensive because he's not having to worry about where am I going to put stuff. The two red areas are the areas that we've considered for new screenings and grid equipment, and those locations are primarily selected so that we can eliminate that pump station. If we put the equipment here, we believe we can gravity flow in and out.
Those two?
Yes, sir. And then the yellow and the green are the two existing reactors that we've talked about cleaning out. There's other miscellaneous work there, but we can get into the details at any time if you guys would see fit. Great. Yes, we do have that's the larger prints we have in the back as well, if you guys would like to take a look at that. So this is a little video, if it works, of basically the type. Is it going to work? Sorry, play that. Open in a. Can I open it in a browser? The video, would that be okay? I'm just going to hit yes. Oh, I can't find it. Maybe. What the video is trying to show you is a very robust stainless steel screening mechanism that is not shrouded circular where you can't access any of the moving parts, but is mostly out of the channel where all the equipment lies, but a piece of wood gets stuck in it. And so basically the modern, here we go, perfect. Yeah. And I'm going to jump in. Oh, no, it's not, okay. Yeah. Get out of the power. Right, okay. That's fine. The screen equipment that you have has some amount of. What's started again? No, this is exactly where I want it to be. So there's a little piece of wood that's underneath that screen, and actually right now it's in its reverse function. Looks kind of funny going down. But basically, the only thing down in the screen is that little cog and that bottom screen, and then it is lifting this stuff out, and it won't break itself. It stops. It moves around. And here in a second, it's going to eventually clear itself, and it's going to bring that piece of wood out. There's a handful of manufacturers that make this type of equipment this robust. And one of the things that we believe is advantageous is that it gives a contractor some options. We're not going to be sole sourcing with one entity that is going to take advantage of that opportunity to increase the price. However, even though this is as robust as we are pointing out to you, we still think we need two. And the idea there is because of the realities of life. If you only put in one, it's very unlikely, but there's a chance that as soon as you put it in, it's going to break, And so, oh gosh, I'm going to need help pulling the presentation back up. I'm so sorry. Oh, I just start PowerPoint again? How do I do that?
Same principle as the rest of it, lead pumps. You want to put a second one in because if the first one fails, then that's a no-brainer.
Oh, here we go. Beautiful. Exactly. And the other thing that happens is nothing is going to get everything out of the channel. So by splitting the flow in two channels, even in the middle of flow, you could hypothetically isolate one, which we would provide gates or valves or some means of doing that. But you could get in there and do something, and you're still having flow going. One of the biggest challenges that we've been trying to figure out about the existing screening installation is how do you fix it and keep it in service at the same time? Well, you don't. you have to either bypass around it, and then we're telling DEQ that we're not screening or grit removing at all, they don't like, or you have to put in some type of temporary equipment, which costs money. And so part of what we believe is going to be the contractor's preference is to basically leave the existing equipment in service as best as it can work while we build new at one of these other locations.
Just a quick question.
Yes, sir.
So the video that you showed and what is actually happening at our plant, what's the difference? All this stuff is just being jammed into what's left and they're having to be removed manually, or what's going on?
Yes, but I would say that what's really happening is the majority of it is getting past the unit because the unit has already filled up, and it's getting into the pipe and then into the pumps and then into the basins.
And destroying other equipment
And destroying
along the
other
way.
equipment.
Okay.
And
Exactly.
filling the basins up.
And
with
filling the
trash.
basins up, reducing the volume of treatment.
Yeah.
That's correct. We invited Lakeside onto the site, the existing screenings and grid equipment, and they were basically able to confirm that the previous evaluation report from 2016 was still likely valid because there had not been a full-scale replacement of the units. And so they would be more than happy for us to try to work with them to replace that. But I think that's where we run into these constructability issues. When we get to bring you guys on site, you'll see how where that piece of equipment is located is the most inaccessible, tight part of the site. If we did a lot of demolition first, it would get better, but it's still not as good as some of these other locations. And then, talking with the operators, they really don't prefer, I want to see if I can go back a slide. This equipment sits one on top of the other, making it very difficult to be able to maintain both pieces of equipment separately without having to take them both out of service. And so going back to this slide, you can see the two different augers or cylinders, extending up out of the channel. The one closer to us in the picture is the screen, the one further back is the grit. But to really get at the bottom components of the further one away, you have to remove the one closer to us. It is a design that is intended to be maintained much more deeply, much more often than this one has been, and so it exacerbates trying to put it back into service quickly. That unit might be down for a month if we tried to replace those pieces of equipment. And then we're talking about spending basically the same amount of money as trying to do it somewhere where they have room to work. And I did flash that up. Nobody had a heart attack, so put it back up here. Big numbers. These are budget numbers. What we call budget numbers are numbers that we don't ever want to have to tell you are going to get bigger. We hope we can bring this down. We believe that with a construction manager or contractor entity involved is one of the best ways to bring that cost down. Time is against us. In the past 5 years, this project right here got twice as expensive. And I couldn't do anything about it. I can't tell you that that's going to happen again, but I don't think it's going to go down in the next 5 years.
What do you typically, at this point in time, and I'm sure that you all have a standard of what you feel is necessary for overage? Is it 10%, 20%?
25
25.
for contingency. Construction contingency is what I'm calling that. And, what I hope that could mean...
77.5 million there.
Well, that's included, sir, sorry. I have included $1 million plus of contingency in this
That's
budget.
in here?
Yes, sir.
It's at the
With
very
the-
bottom.
No, I don't see it.
Part of our goal
There,
is
yeah.
is to be able to account for any cost escalation between now and when we actually spend money. Part of my goal is that maybe some of the things that were on the wants list that are going to slide into the needs list can be afforded. But ultimately, our goal would be to try to bring in the total project for less than $6 million. To be fiscally responsible with the taxpayers' money. And, as a budget number, what we're really talking about today is just making you guys aware of the scale of what we're talking about. What this will have, really as much impact on is the next slide, which is, how are we going to pay for this, right? And so the municipal bond market, I'm sure, would love to be able to give you some money for interest.
I've got a question on
Yes, sir.
this page. Where's the cost of removing all the big old tank and the junk? And
That's going to be, line item
14?
20.
Oh, 20?
Demolition and disposal of existing structures. And I
Yeah,
hope that's
didn't-
enough.
I didn't think that'd be cheap.
One of the things that's difficult about demolition and disposal of large concrete structures is what do you do with it? Do we go ahead and take it to the landfill? One of the things on a project like this that can actually have a very direct impact into the overall budget is if the city has access to, rubble stockpile disposal areas where that could be disposed of, or if there's a place that needs broken concrete as riprap or something, there can be some other creative ways, and oftentimes those are a lot easier to do if you get a contractor involved versus, we don't operate equipment, right? And so we can talk about ideas, but the longer we wait, the more expensive it gets.
You just made that comment that you don't operate equipment. Who oversees it? You all oversee it?
So
So
typically,
you hire a contractor, who does that?
so the contract would be with y'all, with the city. We would represent you as your construction administration and observer. And so we would be on site and we would keep up with them. We would keep records of how much work they're performing. And we would basically turn that into Simon monthly and go over that. And with y'all, if you would like. Sometimes that gets a little boring, but as much as you want. For something like demo, you probably don't want us there full time, but we would check in as needed. When we actually get to the construction of the new equipment, we want to be there to see the trenching. We want to make sure they backfill the piping correctly, make sure they bell every joint correctly, all those things.
That's what we've got to have.
Absolutely.
We have to.
And
you know,
McClellan
depend
offers, yes,
on
sir.
McClellan.
Yes, we have full-time observation staff that are able to provide that.
So I'm going to ask you a question. Going back to page 26,
Okay?
your minimum recommendations, I want you to give me the scenarios of two things, or actually three. One is if we do nothing.
Okay.
Second is if we follow your minimum.
Okay?
Third is what happens with the additional.
Okay. So the do nothing, continued letters that get nastier and nastier from DEQ, likely fines, financial penalties, and then possibly actual arrests or crime, time in jail by either Terry or Simon or the mayor. My minimums.
Well, if Arnak did not.
My minimums would be to basically DEQ stays happy. They don't require any more effort from us. And basically to fund this, we will probably have to raise utility rates to cover the debt service.
So question, since we're all members of the water board, does that make all of us potential felons?
You're on the water
I
board,
don't
not
think so.
wastewater.
No.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Water, sorry.
Not wastewater, right.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But after 2026, if we haven't done the Act 605 compliant rate study, then there's something going on with that.
Yeah.
So to do the minimums, I think the main impact is to rates. If we do the additional recommendations, you're talking about all of a sudden everybody being excited to go to work, and you guys might even win an award for turning around, the situation that we've previously been having. Yes.
Page 26.
Yes.
Are all of these things in your budget? This is the dream list. So all of your minimum recommendations and additional recommendations, all of that is included here?
The minimum is included.
Okay.
The additional basically is partially included. So
Okay.
we have a budget for demolition, but I am not convinced it's going to demolish everything that's not in use right now.
Okay.
It would basically demolish what we believe we need to get out of the way to do the new work.
Okay.
But the other thing is the structural repair of the SBR basin. There's some pretty major cracking that we don't fully understand yet. It's not like pouring wastewater on the ground, but it's something they want us to look at. And so I brought my structural engineer on site. He wants to look at it some more.
Okay.
And then on the
Gotcha.
next page for the solids handling, this is the one that's probably more pertinent to your question.
Okay.
In my budget is, on slide 26, is the aerated sludge storage, which would be conversion of an existing basin. It is the existing conveyor replacement. It is the dedicated waste storage, but it does not include the existing belt filter press rebuild or replacement. It does not include the dry storage enclosure. So,
Will
these are-
the,
yes, sir.
will your 25% contingency cover that?
Maybe. I would like to get a
But maybe
contractor
not.
involved, but maybe not. Yeah.
So
I'm really good at pricing, but it's because I don't make too many promises.
So there we're going to look at what? I mean, just ballpark another 25%?
Ooh. To me, if we can get a couple of these things and come in under 6 million, that's what we would be showing the community that we're being good stewards. I don't want to just, if we save $500,000, but then we have to add $1 million to get that other stuff, I'm not sure if that's really where we want to go.
Here's the thing, in my mind, it's one thing to be good stewards, but we want to, the good steward is the one that's looking at 50 years down the road. Maybe we can't project that far out for this kind of thing, but 20, 25 years, I mean, that's what we got to look at. It's never had it. It's never had that, and it's time.
That is absolutely right. And to your point, what would be a lot easier to do would be to try to answer some of those questions after we receive our new permit, because then we'll know if we have any of those other nutrient loading requirements that we're going to have to
And
be
what's the
making
timeline
modifications.
on that?
That is a really good question. We had a community that waited for 3 years for a permit.
Oh, good God.
So what we would recommend, if the plan and agreement is to move forward with correcting the screenings and grit issue, is engaging the regulatory agencies, which we are very good at. They like us because we do what we tell them we're going to do, and we do what they tell us they need us to do. But basically put them on the spot and point out to them that we're about to spend a lot of money, and if we need to be thinking about anything else, speak now, or we're not going to be able to do it for a number of years. And that's the best approach that we've found. One of the things, just as a side comment, that also impacts this solids handling needs is the composting facilities and operations that you all perform. And Simon has been working with Nick on making sure that we have our permitting in place to make sure that we can take our sludge and use that in the composting process as one of the ways of disposal. And that is one of the least expensive ways of disposal, believe me. Did I answer your question?
Thank you.
So the other thing I wanted to be sure and say on this slide, talking about low-interest federal loans, is that ANRC, the Arkansas administrator of the federal revolving loan program, they are also usually the administrators of any free federal monies that come in. And so whether that's the American Jobs Act or Billy J or whatever the new ones are, when there's free money that is going to be allocated for water and wastewater, it'll go through ANRC, and if you're an existing loan holder, you stand the best chance of getting some free money. Yes, sir.
What's the time frame of getting, are we already too late for that? I mean,
Right now, there is no pending free funds unless we could find a way to qualify for emerging contaminants, which we don't.
how far away are we from being in a position to apply for that?
We have applications with Simon. So one of the things that we were going to ask you all for today is approval to apply. It's one of the things that requires the mayor to have a signatory authority, and so y'all have to give him that authority, basically to sign the application documents. But those are ready to go. That application process typically takes about 3 months for us to hear back from them about available loans. The prospects are very good right now for this project being able to be fully funded by federal loans. And then rates. We believe that it is the number one recommendation for all of our communities to perform a rate study, not necessarily because of this project right now, but because of the overall funding status of the sewer department, which includes the spare parts and some of these other costs that have been coming up. And so we have been working with, we haven't provided it to Simon yet, but we have a proposal from, basically it's an auditor firm, but they only do municipal utility rate studies. They're from Illinois, Michigan, Utility Financial Solutions. We've worked with them many times. Dan's great. And so we would bring them in and work with Simon and the mayor and the finance staff, and we would figure out where the costs to run the water and sewer department lie. And the idea for the Act 605 is to require utilities to charge rates to cover all of those costs to run the utility.
Okay, so tell me again what it is you need the council to do.
You're my best friend right now.
I think, Terry, he said we as a council need to, I'm assuming, make a motion to allow the mayor to be the signatory for applications regarding wastewater treatment.
Correct.
Correct? Okay.
Monies.
Well, okay, so you know what it is. I think that needs to be done tonight. I think it needs to be done tonight.
I agree.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
I just think it's time to get the ball rolling. We'll muddle through things as we go, but I think we need to get after it.
Yes, sir.
Now, as far as the trash thing, that's letting rocks go in,
Right.
that has to be done right away, I would think.
That is our opinion as well.
Because then we're going to have another overflow, and we're going to have,
That's right. That's right.
so, I don't know what part of this budget that is.
Yeah, it is in there. Let me direct you to the line item. To your point, though, this is where it gets a little bit interesting, because to make things happen the most quickly, we will want to spend money sooner than later. And so that could be for our continued engineering design to get drawings together. That could be for the construction manager to come on site and begin doing some of the demolition work, which does not require a DEQ permit. That could be, there's one other thing I was thinking about. Anyway, I'll come back to it.
Rate study.
The rate study is going to generate that, yes, sir. Pre-purchase of equipment, that's where I was going. One of the things that we've run into right now is long lead times, especially on complex pieces of equipment that have to source components for control panels that are made overseas. Okay, so that's almost everything. You put in a purchase order and you are told, okay, we'll get it to you in 12 to 18 months. So the pieces of equipment that we've been looking at, we do not have that long of a lead time, but there is, a lead time, 6 to 9 months on some of it. The sooner you order, the sooner you get it. You don't have the price increases of metal that occur while we're waiting, all of these things. On the budget that I presented you, the line item 15 is the 1/4-inch bar screen, and it shows there as 2. Those costs for each are an installed cost, so that would be the cost of the equipment and the electrical control panel from the manufacturer, and then built on site by the contractor.
50 each, right?
Yep.
$500,000 each.
Yep. Which again, as we looked at the needs, that was the most expensive single need that needs to happen as quickly as possible. And so that's kind of the focus of the effort that's proposed here. even though there's that laundry list of other stuff in there as well that is, all of it costs money.
Number 15, that's $1 million each, basically.
For both.
That's for both. Okay. Okay, I see it. Yeah, all right.
We've had good success requiring our equipment distributors to give us pricing that they'll hold to, but nobody can hold to it forever. And so this would be another example of if we are able to make some motions in the next 6 months, we're good. If we wait a year, I can't promise you that pricing is going to stay.
I think we can make motions sooner than that. We've got a little bit of money that we can work with to get some of this stuff going from, through our I&I. That's what it's for.
Yeah.
But I think and carry us over till that's the big thing, is we got to get after the cash.
Yes, and it's actually the one thing that didn't make it onto my slide here, but it was already on Simon's budget for the year to do the utility study. The proposal that we've received appears that both water and sewer are going to actually be able to be afforded for basically half of the price that he budgeted to do both. So that's really good news, and that's a little bit of money that gets freed up to do something else. But the other items that we've listed here, we believe are really the path forward that begins this relationship where I'm going to get to come hang out with y'all once a month for the foreseeable future. And we're going to give you updates on how we're going to try to bring that $6 million budget down. We're going to give you updates on the application for federal funding and what that looks like, and any updates on grant forgiveness.
You follow through with that.
Yes, sir.
I like that.
And then again, I think we would like your input buy-in on the choice to build new rather than repair the old equipment, which again, we believe is a near cost wash.
Sure.
And then the last thing we haven't talked as much about, but I mentioned it a couple times. So typically, when you guys hire us, we complete design, which takes time. Then we put it out to bid for public. They look at it for a month. Then we find out how much they're going to want to build it. We have some other options. And so the option that we'd like to present to you is the construction manager at risk option. And so for projects in Arkansas that are of a certain budget, which we meet with no problem, the $2 million threshold, you guys are allowed to select a contractor based on qualifications. And that contractor then enters a phase where we design together, and we're updating you with costs along the way. And if at the end of the journey, everybody still agrees that this is an equitable project, you build it. If you don't, you say, okay, thanks for your work. We'll see you later. We're going to go do this somewhere else. I don't think that's going to happen. But the nice thing about it is you have an exit strategy.
How many contractors do you work with now? This kind of project.
This kind of work?
This kind of project.
There's at least 4 or 5 locally, yes, sir. Van Horn Construction, Crossland Heavy Construction. Mm-hmm. We've got Garney Construction, which is not based locally, but they are working locally on many projects right now. And then Benchmark, don't they do CMARC? Who am I thinking of?
Do you have longevity with most of those?
Oh, yes. They're great firms.
Over 5 years? You've only been there 5.
Well, with this firm, but I've been working with these firms since I was
on other projects
at the other firm as well. So I guess a little bit more background. What's your question?
Is the engineering fee in the $6 million?
It is.
Okay.
It is.
Thank you.
We are, McClelland, currently working with the city of Siloam Springs on a new facility that is very similar to the equipment that we're looking at for y'all here. It's going to be a lot bigger, obviously. It's going to be inside of a building. It's going to be more expensive. But they are going construction manager, and they are currently receiving qualification statements next week. The city of Huntsville is working with us on a brand new wastewater plant that's going to a technology more like what you guys have. And they're the ones who got approved for $30 million worth of loans. And they have just selected 2 contractors, well, it's the 2 that submitted, but we're doing interviews of both of them Thursday.
This is similar for the council to what we did with the maintenance building when we selected Nabho's. as a project manager at risk.
Nabholz, definitely.
Same, is Nabholz one of the companies? Yeah. So if we have, as soon as I can get with McClellan, they can give me some boilerplate to put out for proposals. We can put that out next week and get, within 30 days, present and make, some recommendations with the help of McClellan to the city council on who to recommend to hire on that.
And just based on preliminary talks, there are definitely contractors that are interested in this project.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
And I'm sure they're all qualified and good. And, and again, the sooner you can get things done, the faster and the cheaper it is. The maintenance building came in under cost. We have to remember that, so that's a good thing.
It does appear that the market is, for these larger municipally funded capital improvement projects, shifting towards construction manager as a really, it's not necessarily going to be your lowest cost option, but it's the no surprise option. And, lowest cost usually means change order, so.
I think there were a lot of surprises in the past, so I don't think we need any new ones.
Well, it was a different type of system, bid system too, and different type of, this was a brand new type of facility that was being built. I don't know whether there was another built in the state like this one, I'm not sure. But anyway, going back to our rate study, is it kind of my understanding too that theoretically with our new rate studies and our new rates, that would help us on the funding to pay for the
Absolutely. The goal with the rates would be to fully fund your debt service. And so this is one of the neat things that is available, that with new rates in place, which again, we may not have recommendations for a couple of months yet, but if we were to enact those, you begin generating the revenues before we have to start spending money. And so you can start to get ahead of that curve a little bit, and then basically the very end loan is a little bit less than we even thought it was.
But those rates have to be an affordable rate.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. And that's one of the things that we look at, and we'll be able to bring to you guys usually 3 or 4 options on how to structure the rate increases, both which rate users to increase or decrease appropriately, and then over what periods of time. Often if a rate increase is going to be more than 30%, it's nice to stagger that as 2 separate rate increases that have some time in between them for people to kind of adjust.
Does the factor of rate increases, can that put you in a position for more federal grant money?
Almost the
I don't know how
opposite. If
that
your
works.
rates are not right, you're not eligible for funding
Oh, no,
because you can't.
they got to be right. I
Right.
understand
Yeah.
that. They
Yeah.
got to be right, but
I'm not sure about that. That's a good question. What I think, to your point, is that with balanced books, yes, you are more eligible for grants because you're not in financial distress.
so I'm just thinking if we could get federal participation, not in loans but in grants of 40% or something like that, that would be huge.
It would be very huge.
But it may be possible. I don't know.
What's your experience with availability of grants on projects?
The thing that to me is the number one is to get into the loan program, because when money is available, if you don't already have a loan, you're below everybody who already has a loan before you can even be eligible to get any of the free money. And so, it's almost like get the federal loan going, and then if you can pay it off more quickly with cheaper money from somewhere else, then it's a win-win.
Well, I think the biggest thing that we hear, again, from John Q. Citizen, who doesn't have a lot of experience, is this: well, there's a lot of grants out there, there's a lot of free money. And of course, my experience is that's not necessarily true.
For large grants, we would be looking at major federal action like we have heard of in the past with the big bills that come down for infrastructure spending and stuff, which there's not necessarily one on the horizon right now, but much smaller grants for specific things. And so whether that would be energy efficiency by installing new light fixtures over the whole plant or something like that, that is definitely something that we can be looking and
One
focusing
pump
on.
instead of two?
Right. Well, yeah. And the health department's funny because they make you install extra stuff just so that it's
I'm not
there.
opposed to that.
It's often that they won't even allow us to have the spare like on a shelf right next to it. That's not an
That's
install.
not good.
Yeah. So,
Uninterrupted service.
I saw on your slide, and I guess right behind me too, what we're needing to do, and I'm not sure we need to do all these tonight, but we need to get the approval of the council needs to approve the budget on there, approve for the signature authority, which we talked about earlier. I'm not sure we mentioned anything about the approval of a new building, or new project.
I think that was just in reference to rather than trying to repair the old equipment, look at trying to get in new stuff at a different location.
Okay.
Make sure that we believe that that's the effort that we think is appropriate.
And then definitely the approval of the construction management
Right.
at risk.
And regards equipment, I mean, basically, we can continue to review as many options as you guys want, but in our experience, there's a lot of effort that can be made, and we're not going to come up with brand new answers, right? But basically, that number 3 is the detailed work that we will be ongoing with Simon.
Okay. We still got to do budget work
Yep.
before,
No.
or no?
All right, we have any other questions for Zane?
Thank you all. Great questions.
Thank you.
We do have drawings back there. Are y'all leaving?
Yes.
Right after this? Because I know the weather's getting bad.
Oh, is it?
Well, I don't know if it is or not, but it could be.
I'm going to be around for a little while, so.
Okay. I don't know how long council will last.
Sure.
Are those our drawings that we have back there? They are. Okay.
And we can get you more copies of that, just let us know.
Oh, that's fine. It's just as long as Simon can explain or,
Thank
what
you to
they
my
are.
helper over here too for running IT for me. I really appreciate that.
does any of the council members have any other questions for the engineers or for Simon right now? All right. Thank you very much. We certainly appreciate it. And
Absolutely. Thank you again.
I think when the weather gets a little bit better, we will certainly have to take a field trip down to the plant.
Absolutely. And,
you know.
it just makes it make so much more sense when you're standing there and you're seeing it and smelling it.
Bring your own Vaseline.
Yeah, I was going to dress for it.
That's right.